to my computer. Right. All right, so let's dive into this week's expansion sync. Looks like there's 3 items on the agenda today. Matej, do you want to take the first one?
Yeah, so I recently, because I started working again on some of the recommendations that came out of a UX scorecard for upgrading, right? Which is the contact sales form, right? And this is actually just the 4th recommendation out of 4, I think, from those. The first one was to update the documentation because it was really poor in the first place. And then the second one would be to link to that documentation from somewhere inside the app. And we have a concept and everything where we put that link in the user dropdown. But it seems like we're blocked on that issue. And I'm not sure whether it's because we can't run proper experiments there like we can on .com, or is it simply because we're focusing a lot more on .com as a company lately, or is it a combination of both, or is it just our prioritization that it's a bit, prioritizing a bit more .com lately?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things there, nuanced things. So we don't have an easy way to run experiments on self-managed instances today. And I know that we're digging in there and trying to learn more about it. The second piece is that we have been focusing on GitLab.com, mainly because it's easier for us to collect and analyze data specifically to an experiment, and we also have better control over that experiment through the feature flag functionality on .com. It's just easy, so that way if something goes, if it doesn't work out, we can simply just do the chat ops command and shut it down. So I think that's part of it. And from a prioritization perspective, I think the stuff for self-managed it should be, this is just me thinking out loud, but it should be very high priority. It's where the majority of our revenue lies today, but we still haven't figured out how do we do experiments there, or is the approach we don't run an experiment and we simply just introduce this and collect feedback through UX research or surveys. And I don't know that we've made a decision there as an organization. So that's my thinking.
That's exactly how I see it as well. Because I did notice from when I speak to my manager, from when I speak to other designers, there's been a focus on .com lately, and that makes total sense. And I know that we can't run proper experiments on self-hosted, but in this particular example, and maybe there would be other similar ones where we just know, hey, this will improve the user experience quite a bit, and it's quite a small change, right? Does it need to be an experiment in order for us to prove the value of it? Or should we sometimes ship things because we know they will improve the experience? And in this particular case, we have the additional option of running pretty much the same experiment on .com. So we could basically take the learnings from there and say, hey, we're expecting something similar on self-hosted, right?
Yeah.
Would that be a sensible approach?
And I don't think that everything should be an experiment. I feel like there's a lot of things out there or issues that we can work on that we know will add value. And the traditional product team just either hasn't been able to get to it, or it hasn't been assigned, or it hasn't been picked up by, a team to run with or a group to run with. So if they fall in line with what we're trying to accomplish, we might as well, give it a shot. And maybe maybe the order of, maybe the sequencing is, if we can do it on self-managed, we should be able to do it on .com as well. So why don't we run it on .com, and if it works well, then we can introduce it to self-managed. Maybe that's the best path for things that we don't necessarily need to do an experiment with.
Exactly.
So let's think. I like
go
that.
Ahead.
No, that's what I was thinking. I was just saying, like, especially for the contact sales. It is an issue, right? So for self-managed instances, we know that it's really hard for them to contact sales.
Yeah.
But it's unique
To
there to
self-manage.
self-manage
Yeah.
because it's on GitLab.com. It's actually quite easy.
To upgrade. Yeah.
Yep. So there's a little bit of there's a thing there, right? So maybe let me think on that one a little bit more, and I'll go back. I'll ask Hila. I have my one-on-one with her later today,
Okay.
and see what the correct course is.
Yeah, I agree on that. Contact sales form, it's a bit more complex, but the step before we go and do that is just exposing a link to that documentation page somewhere in the UI, somewhere in the app, right? And that doesn't feel like a really complex thing or something, I don't know, where we would, it's not even specific to self-hosted as well. So again, we can test it on .com, see the results,
Right.
apply the same thing. So yeah, I'm glad that you also kind of share this view that not everything needs to be an experiment. So let's approach these things case by case, I guess. That's what I'm taking from it.
Yep. Sorry, I'm just finishing my note here. Regarding the issue that is specific to contacting sales on a self-managed instance. It is different. It's a different user experience on .com. All right, so number two, I have 3 issues in here. I figured maybe we could just review them together. I can share my screen. Hopefully y'all can see this.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that, you know, the expansion team is now focusing on GitLab.com navigation. We have a great opportunity here to make some big improvements. And in this issue specifically, Jackie, myself, Matej, I think a bunch of folks have contributed to this. But what we did was we dug in and we basically found all of the different navigation, we'll call them quote unquote navigation elements that exist today in the product, and documented what we thought they were. And then what we did was we even went as far as to say, hey, what's the MVC for the expansion team to focus on? Because it can be quite overwhelming. So if you really dig in here, we can see that there's a lot of different navigation elements. Specifically, if you scroll down to my comment here, you can start to see all of the different screens that have navigation components, and the things that we would want to focus on. So we're using this issue specifically as a catch-all, so that way we can at least have visibility into what are all of the navigation elements, and then what is the expansion team going to focus on specifically. Jackie was super proactive and created this mural doc as well, which basically takes all of the different screenshots and elements and put them in one single page, which is it's a little tricky to see. As you can see this map down here, it's quite large, so you have to take some time to really kind of wrap your head around it all. But the good news is that it's all documented. It's all on a page. We can go back and look at it and figure out what we want to do. The MVC that we landed on has been basically documented in this issue here, which is coming off of the main one that Jackie created. And Doug, I wanted to thank you for just going in and checking my work. But what we're going to be focusing on for the MVC is basically this main nav here. So there's 11 different elements. And then down here, we're also going to be looking at the side navs for project, group, and user. I did verify with Sid Reddy that some of these are actually firing in Snowplow, but they're not all custom events. They're unstructured, and some of them fire through the CSS. Some of them have structured events. Some of them don't have any. We've scheduled some time for tomorrow to just go through and basically do just an audit of all of these different elements up here to see what has been created and what hasn't been created. At the end of the conversation that I had with Sid, he basically said, what you're doing here is actually a pretty solid approach, because once it is a custom event, it won't change. So if we were to use the auto unstructured events that come out of Snowplow, if somebody were to change anything in the code base, it would then change the data that we would be reporting on. So it's probably smarter for us to go through this instrumentation exercise, even though it is a little bit of a lift, and then go from there. So that's the first one that I wanted to bring up to the group. Does anybody have any questions about that one?
So Tim, I did notice as well, when I went over that, that's why I kind of know it's a good first spec, because I do know that some of those things are already being recorded because the code shows me that. So your table will change a little bit, because we're probably not going to replace what's there. You know what I mean?
That's right. Yeah. For the ones that already have custom events, which is helpful. So, and then I think the next step after that is to really just submit a request to the data team and say, once this is instrumented, let's go ahead and just create a dashboard for all of these things. So I'm pretty excited there. Matej, did you have any questions about that one?
No, I think it's a good start because when I initially asked, when I found out that the expansion team would own the navigation, and I asked Jackie, what does that mean? Is it just the main nav elements, or is it pretty much everything on how users navigate through all of the pages? And it was the second one in her answer. But we need to start somewhere, right? We can't capture everything from the start. And I think this is a good start.
Yeah. Awesome. So Doug, do you want to voice over your question?
Sure. How will the navigation role or duty affect our current work on experiments, priority-wise, etc.?
Yeah, so I think we're still figuring that out. We don't know how much work is going to come out of this. I mean, just at first glance, this could be a completely separate category for us. And I did raise those concerns to Gila, Bartek, and Phil, because I don't want, and I'm pretty sure Jackie also, Matej, is aware that this is it's a pretty significant lift, and as it relates to our ability to manage, running experiments for what we've already signed up for that impacts net retention. We also need to spend time on the navigation. So I'm assuming that we're going to have to request for additional resources. I'm just not sure what that looks like for when that conversation is going to happen, Doug. So in the interim, I'll take prioritization, and we'll make sure that we get everything kind of leveled out.
Sure. I mean, it's more going to affect you, Tim, and Matej, I would think, because if you're if you're focused on it, then that's what we're going to be working on, and then
Right.
so the pipeline will change like that until we get like a large backlog of things in either area, expansion or navigation.
All right, so that was actually this one, so I can just delete the second one because we covered both there. Actually, let me just take this. Put it up there. They kind of go together. And this one, wanted to talk a little bit more about this one. I know we're coming up on time, but looks like we're adding the invite members link to the assignee dropdown, right? So this is closed. The next step is to actually move it into a modal so that way users don't need to abandon their work on GitLab.com. It looks like there were still some outstanding questions on here. I didn't necessarily see them, so I was curious if you all had any outstanding questions for them, or if we can begin to break this down. We could break it down asynchronously, Doug, or if you and Jackie wanted to have a sync, we can do that too. I'm just not sure the best way to kick this off without her here.
Yeah, I haven't had time to go through that fully, okay. But I don't think that matters. I think you can asynchronously break it down, and if we have issues, we'll deal with it. I don't see any major problems though.
Okay. All right, I'll make a comment in there like I have in the past, saying, hey, let's tackle this planning breakdown section asynchronously, ask any outstanding questions and basically document the additional issues that you'll need me to write.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the only thing that usually comes out of this is things that we notice in the code or by running it locally that maybe we haven't captured, right? And
yeah.
That's mostly what I see at times.
Awesome. Just an update. I realize we don't have an epic or a handbook page about the team's ownership of navigation. I spoke with Hila about it last week. Her recommendation to me was, basically come up with a philosophy. Identify what navigation means to us, how we want to manage specific things. If you think about what we have the ability to impact, it's basically we're going to have a large impact on probably one of the most utilized pieces of the application, which is the navigation. So even small changes can really drive user behavior and traffic in certain ways. So we really need to come up with a philosophy so that way users of the application know how we're going about making changes and why we're making those changes. And then we'll also want to make sure that we're getting feedback from the community and listening. I think those are really, really important things. So I'm going to spend some time writing that up. I'll create an MR, and I'd love for some feedback. I do want this to be a team contribution. I'm happy to drive it, but at the same time, I'd love to have everybody's input on it. So just know that one's coming. Doug, do you want to take the next one?
Sure. So there's an issue I'm working on, which is the removing the pop-up from popover from the merge request, suggesting a pipeline. And I noticed through the second linked issue there that we're also concurrently trying to change the copy on this. So I think we're conflicting here. I think, do we want to remove the popover and change the copy in that, or do we want to change the copy in the popover? Because one of our work is going to trump the other person's work. Because it's not like we have two experiment flags around just divvying that up right now. Right.
Yeah, that's definitely not the intended behavior that we want either. We want the copy to be updated in the new design.
Right. And so I think part of Jackie's thing should go away.
Okay. Let me sort this out. Let me see.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of like other copy updates that have no impact on what I'm doing in the first nudge area, but the first nudge area part of that issue she has is conflicting with mine.
I remember we spoke about this once where we said we'll first run the experiment with alternative copy, and then a separate one after that one with this alternative nudge design, right? But yeah, it seems like when you work on both at the same time, you're kind of negating each other's work.
Yeah.
Or partly at least, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised this because we made the copy, so we wrote the issues for the copy updates, and then we wrote the design updates afterwards.
Yeah.
So I can understand why it would be. And now that we're working on them concurrently, it's gonna, yeah, they're not gonna, they don't, the issues don't merge together magically.
Yeah, no. So yeah, let me know like today or tomorrow or something like that, what you decide. I can hold back on mine and just leave it work in progress, or we can let Jackie know and you know, and just tell her maybe not need to focus on the first nudge copy change.
Awesome. All right, well, I think we're at time, just on time. So y'all better get to your next meeting.
Yeah, cool.
Thanks, y'all.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.